what his teachings were, and how many of us have really been enlightened with his teaching. So here we would like to say that Acharya Mahaprajna ji was a great philosopher, and he has thought about science and Jainist principle, how they both can connect together. The science aspect we have already heard from six of our professors, six of our speakers. They have been really great and really giving in the teachings that they have learned after their research, after their understanding of the topic. They have spent a lot of time in giving this gift to us, to the community. And thank you so much for everyone, for all those six professors that had created this. And thank you, Shramiji, for bringing all these diamonds, like I said in my before too, that thank you for bringing all these diamonds here during this Corona time, that we are all connected on one platform through this virtual conference. And today I would like to talk to you about a little thing that Acharya Mahaprajna Ji's one thing more than science that he wanted was character formation. And today I'm going to talk about character formation because that is linked to our speaker's topic. So character formation, and I know that one thing we all know, since most of us, we came from India, and the most part of the character formation was done by my parents. And I do understand that whatever our parents taught, sometimes when we go to the reality and the life has taught us so many things that we have kept as a treasure, what life has taught us. So then the question arises, what my parents taught me and what the life has taught me are two different aspects? No. So one of my students asked me, and remember, I teach gifted kind of kids, so they're like high above the level. So they're asking me, why do I have to come to school when I already know what you're going to teach? And a lot of kids have asked, and I know young parents, I think you have come across this question from your own kids, that why do I have to go to school? School teaches you the finesse. Maybe you might not have taken what every class that you have learned in every subject, but school teaches you finesse. Same thing. Life is a school, and life teaches you finesse. Every day, life teaches you something new. Although my parents have made a foundation of a character, but what I learned from life, and most of it, what I adapted, what I learned in my life, Corona has taught me. And what I say to everybody is, what nobody taught, or what everybody taught, but I never accepted that in my life or never adapted in my life, Corona was my best teacher. So since we are all talking about positive stuff here, what Corona has taught me, all the philosophers, all my teachers, all my whatever my parents have taught me, I think the one thing Corona taught me was finesse. I gave time to myself. And all those females who had made such beautiful homes, all those viewers who are listening to me today, all those females who have made beautiful homes, gave so much time to your family. And during this Corona time, you were in and out of kitchen, putting everybody's demands more than yours. This was your me time. So spend some me time for yourself. Spend some character formation for yourself. And give yourself that time that nobody will give it to you. And with that context, I wanted to say that, yes, time is so important. What money cannot do, time can do. And in our community, we know that we are all workaholics. We work and we work and we work so much. Yes, we are going to have a great retirement. We are going to have a great 401k. But what is not going to come back is time. And the time that you spend with your kids, the time that you spend for yourself, time that you spend on yourself and with your family is the most important aspect which Corona has taught. And I have listened to so many people and they have said, oh my God, my husband used to work so much. This is the first time he was able to contribute some time to myself. So all those Indian guys, please don't watch too much cricket. Spend that time with your wife. because that is the most important aspect that will take you to your old age, that you both can have a perfect life, even though if you won't have your kids with you, but you will have each other. So those are little things that I just wanted to say today, and what Corona has taught. So how about we put this in the chat, that put one thing in your chat, what life has taught you, or your parents have taught you, or Corona has taught you, anything that you were not able to adapt. Either your parents, or Corona, or life, or your teacher taught you, and you thought it was an amazing teaching, but you were not able to adapt it still. So, one thing, please put, remember, I'm a language arts teacher, so I'm going to say one word. So, I'm going to put mine in the chat first. In the chat, please put one thing that you thought it was an amazing thing, but you were not able to adapt it. You were not able to put that in your life and accept it, or you were not able to activate it. So put that one thing. And I see that in the chat. My very good friend who has joined here from the district, Nancy Valdez. Thank you, Nancy. Flexible. Yes, flexibility, flexibility. That in your life, being flexible. And I'm going to put forgiveness. That was one thing we think. I see here appreciation. Jonathan Perez, thank you. I put here forgiveness. So many things that we say, it is a great teaching and we should do it. But sometimes we are not able to do it completely as we should do. I see patience. I see certain things that we think this is the best thing, we should do it and we should activate it and we should put it in action. But sometimes we're not able to do it. Why? Why we're not able to do it? There are a lot of circumstances. And like I said before, life teaches us so many things. Hello for family. Yes. Remember, I still remember one thing Acharya Mahaprajna said in one of his lectures, that I went back and I was listening to it. And it came from a Kabirji's Doha. Is like Kabir said, two lines poetries, and one of his poetries talked about Nindak niyare rakhiye, always keep the critic next to you, because that critic will not take any money, but it will chisel you to accept the life versatilities. And that is what is happening, that what we are doing, we are not keeping these critics, we should keep them in our first pocket, that where our hands reach. Why? Because these critics are going to teach you the actual life lessons, which nobody can teach you. You go to a doctor, and sorry, Dr. Kirti Jain and all the doctors in the audience, you're going to give money to the doctor or a psychiatrist to get that advice. But remember, those people who are critical advisors of yours, please keep them closer. Keep them closer than anybody else. Never fear that they are going to put you down. No, they are chiseling you to create a golden personality. So with my 2 cents today, I am going to bring here David Skid. And David here has been with us for so many years with the JERF organization. David is the Associate Director at FIU. He is the Associate Director of Green School of International and Public Affairs. So with further ado, I should be quiet and I should call on David Skip. So here you go, David, all yours.
Well, thank you so much.
Hi, David.
It's a pleasure. I was so pleased to look at the list of participants and see so many names of people that I now count as old friends, really special. And at the Green School at FIU, we are so honored and always have been that the Jain community chose us. I'm not sure, I don't remember exactly why, but you chose us to put your faith in to establish the first real Jain studies program in the United States. And this isn't, but just very briefly, we have been so excited by the possibilities of this Jain program and its growth that I just wanted to announce that Dean Stack and all of us are super excited about an upcoming nationwide campaign to money to really elevate this groundbreaking program to a full-blown center that will be dedicated, of course, to the study of Jainism and, in addition, the support of smaller programs all around the country. And I know that all of you will support our efforts. Thank you, Deep. It's really a distinct honor to have been asked to introduce today's speaker, who will speak to us on a theme so important, so timely, the intersection of happy and healthy, the science behind forgiveness. I really can't think of a more fitting, more welcome subject in these difficult times. And I certainly know Dr. Kirti Jain has forgiven me many times over the years, and I continue to be healthy and happy. So, thank you. As most people know, Dr. Jain is a prominent oncologist. He was born in the small village of Gogunda near Udaipur in Rajasthan. But after earning his medical degree from the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, he took this decision to travel to the United States to pursue cancer education and research at Sloan Kettering, the cancer center in New York City, which is world famous. And ever since Dr. Jain came to Sloan Kettering, he has maintained a lifelong relationship there in laboratory clinical research in cancer. Quite remarkable. Dr. Jain then went on to establish several cancer centers in Kentucky, and I didn't know this, in West Virginia. He also established hospitals and a medical college at his home in Udaipur. Dr. Jain is also a professor of oncology at the Pikeville Medical College in Kentucky and is chief of staff at Our Lady of Bellefonte Hospital, also in Kentucky. Somewhere he finds spare time, and he's president of the Indo-American Cancer Association. As all of us know, he's a founding member of JIRF, served as its president from 2015 to 2019, and he's a member of the Academic Liaison Committee of JAINA. But I think most of us know about Kirti's professional career. It's well documented, but what's not as well known is his dedication to promoting the understanding of Jain philosophy and culture, and maybe most importantly, the critical importance of cultivating a new generation of young Jain leaders and people like me, non-Jains, to understand and appreciate the practice and principles of Jainism. I will never forget, several years ago, many of you joined us at FIU when we hosted the National Jain Leadership Conference. I will never forget it. And at that, on that occasion, I had the fortune to be introduced to Dr. Kirti's children. They are beautiful children, and I was very, very impressed how dedicated those children are to following in their father's path. Well, it's now my pleasure to introduce you and welcome Dr. Kirti Jain. Thank you.
David, thank you so very much. You're always so generous with your words, as you always have been, and I truly appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. Let me start with the pranam to one of the great thinkers of 20th century, Acharya, Mahaprajna ji, and Mandami Samiji. Jajanan to all my friends across the world. I know there are several people here from India and some other countries as well. I would like to start with expression of my gratitude for FIU, the Florida International University, who have provided Jain Education and Research Foundation, a wonderful platform for Jain studies. And Samnijis over years who have contributed so much to this program, and so many thousands of students that have been able to benefit from this program, as well as so many other courses that have been started. I'm truly grateful that FIU and JERF could come to this partnership, which has been so wonderful. I would also like to express my gratitude for Jain Center of South Florida for hosting it. And with that, I'd like to go ahead. Deep, that initial monologue was awesome. Let me go ahead and share the screen. And can my screen be seen?
Yes.
Excellent. So with that, the topic has already been introduced. I'm going to start the topic with a couple of stories. The stories will be a bit half finished, and we'll finish them before we leave for the day. First is, these are true stories, by the way. These are not made up stories. These are real people. Sammy's full name is actually Sammy Rangel, and that is his true name, although Nancy's name has been changed. That is not her true name. So let me tell you the story of Sammy. Sammy was a very unfortunate person who was born in a broken family. At the age of 3, he and his sister were raped by their maternal uncle. If that wasn't enough, his mother and his stepmother constantly abused them. He was not fed enough. He was beaten up practically every day of his life, to the point that by the age of 8, he thought of committing suicide. The only thing was that the rope broke. At the age of 11, Sammy stood one night with a knife in his hand over the bed of his mother, wanting to kill her. But he didn't have the courage to do that. He left home. He became a street kid. He joined a gang, as you would expect. He did everything bad that could be done, did drugs, drank, sex, what have you. He became a hardened criminal. He was introduced to murders by one of his gang members who slit a throat in front of him. First time Sammy could not do it, but once he hardened, he had no trouble murdering people. At the age of 17, he got into the prison for the first time. By now, he already had 2 children. By now, he didn't know who the children were from. By now, he was a gangster outside and inside the prison. He used to describe himself, when he was in and out of the prison multiple times, he used to describe himself as more of an animal than human being. Do you think there's any reprieve for Sammy? Do you think anything can be done for a hardened criminal who is full of hate for everybody, like Sammy? We'll find out a little later in this talk, but let's go with the second story, and we'll follow through both these stories. Second story is that of Nancy. As I said, also a true story. Her name has been changed. Nancy had a child, lost the child to cancer at the age of 3. Soon afterward, she lost her mother, lost her sister to different diseases. She and her husband were the only people left. 12 years later, she gets another child. Soon afterwards, her husband divorces her, and she and the second child are the only one left. Child grows up. She finally finds some happiness. He's 23 years old. One day, he called the mom and said, Mom, I'm going to come over to see you. Well, he called an hour later and said, well, my mother-in-law says that I need to go with her for a dinner. Well, that's okay. They go out for dinner. He drinks. Mother-in-law encourages him to drink more. She likes to drink herself. They all drink. That night, after dinner, he goes home. The son's name was Brett. Brett goes home and kills himself, commits suicide. He was too drunk. Somehow he commits suicide. It is 6 hours later that Nancy is called by Brett's mother-in-law and told about the death of the son. Nancy has nobody left. She's full of bitterness, anger, blames herself, blames the mother-in-law, blames even her son. Is there any reprieve for her? We'll talk about that. Human beings have been around for a long time. And it's not new that we mistreat each other. That's not. But take a look at a few pieces of statistics. It gives you some sense of how human beings can truly be capable of such mistreatment. 5 million women experience physical violence every year in US alone, in a single country. 500,000 homicides, murders, annually worldwide. 800,000 suicide every single year worldwide. That's one suicide every 40 seconds. By genocide alone, 250 million people have been killed. That's 250 million just by genocide. That does not include wars. That does not include other causes of deaths. Look at this list. Names you will recognize: Socrates, Cleopatra, Robin Williams, Anthony Bourdain, Sushant Singh Rajput, a very famous Indian actor. What would you think of when you look at this list? You would think of success. You would think of intelligence. You would think of a life you want to live. And yet, the only thing common between them is that they all committed suicide. You have to ask why. If you were to go to the suicide prevention hotline, you would learn that people who can practice forgiveness have a much lower incidence of depression. And for the same level of depression, those who practice forgiveness have a much lower incidence of suicide. So there is something somewhere, there is some violence involved in it. Forgiveness is not new. Human beings have been around a long time. Human beings have been mistreating each other for a long time. And forgiveness has been around just as long. Faiths, religions recognize that long time ago, that forgiveness is important. Centuries ago, Mahavir, and even before that. Science was a little late in recognizing how important forgiveness is. But like anything scientific, science has to find proof. And it was about late 80s or 90s that the scientists, the psychologists, the psychiatrists got interested in learning about forgiveness, to finding proof whether it truly works. We'll look at that a little bit as well. I'm sure you all heard of this phrase, forgive and forget, except that it's not easy to forget. You may be able to forgive, if you've risen to that level, but forget it. And I'm sure you've heard, the stupid is the one who neither forgives nor forgets. And that might put many of us in that category. The naive forgives and forgets. If only we could rise to that level. I'm sure there are few of you who can, but that's a rarity. So that leaves us the wise. Wise is the one who can forgive, even though he won't forget. And that's what we hope to be. So when you want to understand forgiveness, the first thing to understand is learn forgiveness is what forgiveness is not. That's very important because it is the greatest barrier to learning forgiveness. The greatest barrier to mastering forgiveness or learning the skill of forgiveness is mixing up what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not. So forgiveness does not mean that you have forgotten the injustice that was done to you. Whether it was real or perceived doesn't matter. But forgiveness doesn't mean that you've forgotten that. You cannot forget the injustice that was done. There's no need for it either. It doesn't mean that you condone wrongdoer's action. It doesn't. You're not condoning it. You're not accepting that it was okay to do what you did. It also doesn't mean that you're ignoring the harm that was done to you or you allow that to happen again. No, you can stand up against it, but still you can forgive. And it does not weaken your resolve to fight for what is right. If you want to fight against injustice, yes, you can fight even while you forgive the person who is, or the government or whosoever is creating that injustice. You can forgive them and continue to fight. And examples are in front of you. Gandhi did that. Martin Luther King did that. Nelson Mandela did that, and many others. Let's look at the religions. We said faiths and religions have preached forgiveness from time immemorial. And the great thing is every single faith seems to do that. Every single major faith anyway. If you look at Christianity, the Gospel of Matthew is with Christ making it clear that in order to be forgiven by God, humans must forgive others, just like Christ forgave you. Or in Luke, judge and you won't be judged. Don't condemn and you won't be condemned. Forgive and you will be forgiven. If you look at Judaism, their book, Torah, we call it the Bible of Judaism, there it says that God gave humans free will, and therefore it is their responsibility for their own actions. The great emphasis is on teshuvah, or repentance, that if you sincerely repent, God will forgive you. Look at Islam in Quran, Surah 2, verse 55. Ask forgiveness for your sins with all your might, with all sincerity, with true devotion, and Allah will forgive you. Sikhism, it's a gift from Vaheguru, that is God. You give it to the transgressor or the one who did wrong, whether he deserves it or not. Don't get into whether the transgressor deserves forgiveness or not. Go ahead and forgive anyway. Hinduism, forgiveness is one of the virtues, the cardinal virtues that Sanatana Dharma or Hindu Dharma teaches. And Gita says that the attitude of forgiveness is the culmination of spiritual practices. And by cultivating it, you can cultivate all other virtues you need to attain salvation. Buddhism. Buddha emphasizes compassion. It says your compassion should be such that you forgive and even before the forgiven, even for the person who committed the wrongdoing, even knows about it, even before that person knows you have forgiven that person, that deep should be your compassion. And that brings me to Jainism. How does Jainism view forgiveness? Forgiveness in Jainism is based on Samyak Darshan, that is the right insight. We believe that all souls are pure, but karmas, our own karmas, through different lives can cover that pure soul with karmic layers, and that in turn causes false beliefs, passion, ignorance, and that leads to the misconduct. Therefore, the one who did something wrong to you did it because of his past karmas, because his pure soul, he still has a pure soul, or she still has a pure soul, but that was covered with the karmic particles which led to the misconduct that this person committed. And Mahavir said, Lord Mahavir said, we should forgive ourselves, our own soul first, because soul is pure. It is covered by our karmas. So what about forgiving others? Well, forgiving others is simply a practical application of forgiving ourselves. What Jainism says that the forgiver, the one who is forgiving, is not a victim. Don't think of yourself as a victim of something wrong has been done to you. Rather, you're the one who has vivek, that is, you can discern. You're the one who have gyan, that you are not ignorant. When you can forgive, you are not distorting, you are not covered by distortion of reality or mithya, and you are rising above the passions or kashaya of anger and ego. And that is why Jainism has said, Kshama virasya bhushanam, or forgiveness is the ornament of brave. Only the brave can do that. Jainism did something beyond other faiths. They elevated forgiveness to the point that every day you should seek forgiveness from all living beings for what you may have done knowingly or unknowingly. You may have killed a tiny animal walking over it and not realizing you're killing it. Seek forgiveness. That's what pratikraman is. You do that every day, or supposed to do that. But then Jainism also realized that that may not be possible for everybody to do that, or everybody may not be able to do that for whatever reason. Therefore, an annual day was designated, which is called Kshamayachna Day, Divas, or Uttam Kshama Divas, once a year. Something that hasn't been done by other faiths yet, something that UN and other bodies have tried to do, but Jainism did it thousands of years ago, that once a year, take an inventory, think about who may have hurt you, and forgive them. Once a year, do that. Kshamayachna Divas is not what it has become lately. Kamat Kamanasa, and we mean nothing. We send a card to everybody. We make one click on WhatsApp and 100 people get your Kamat Kamana and you mean nothing. That's not what the day is all about. The day is about truly thinking, meditating over who may have hurt you, and truly ask for forgiveness, forgive the ones who have hurt you, and do it with all its sincerity. That's not sending Kamat Kamana to everybody without anything attached to it. So then, is there only one or two kinds of forgiveness now? Well, there are three kinds of forgiveness. The toughest one is forgiving others, and that is the one you want to learn about. Receiving forgiveness sometimes can be hard, but that is easier. Somebody else is forgiving and you simply receive it. But there's also self-forgiveness. Sometimes we do something bad, some misdeed, and then loathe ourselves. Then we realize we did something bad. We feel we lower our own value in front of our eyes. What self-forgiving does is it enables you as an individual from what you did. So what you're saying is, I'm not a bad person. Yes, I did something bad, but doesn't make me a bad person. I recognize I did something bad. I'll seek forgiveness for it. I'll correct it. I'm not a bad person. So separating what you did bad or what misdeed you undertook and separating that from you, the pure soul that you are, recognizing that, forgiving yourself, and that can be the first step before you can forgive others. So after that intro, what is forgiveness then? That's very important to learn, because if you don't know what forgiveness is, you can't forgive. So forgiveness means that hurt that that deep hurt that you have within you for whatever incident, against whosoever, can be somebody close, can be somebody distant. You have a great deal of resentment because of that. You want to take revenge. You want to do something equally bad to the other person. You need to let go of that resentment, the rumination that you have over and over, the thought that comes to your mind over and over, the whole scenario that you play over and over in your mind where this person did something wrong to you. Let go of that. Free yourself. Get out of the prison that you're in. So it is letting go of the resentment, letting go of that need to seek revenge. Why revenge is bad? Listen to Confucius. He said, everybody knows Confucius, I'm sure. Confucius said, before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves, not 1 grave. You want to take revenge? Dig your own grave also. Revenge is that bad. That resentment is that bad. It will kill you, whether it does it in bodily or otherwise, but it will kill you. So when you give forgiveness to somebody, what you're doing is you're giving a gift of acceptance, generosity. You're being generous. You're expressing love, not because you have pity on that person, not because you feel somehow obligated, but you chose to be free. You wanted to get out of the prison. What it does for you is it allows you to leave the past behind you. It allows you to move on in life without all that you're carrying with you, the load that you're carrying on your back, the anger, the hurt, the contempt, the resentment, the need to seek revenge. So when you forgive somebody, when you genuinely forgive somebody, you leave your painful past behind you. You live in the beauty of present and you heal yourself. The forgiveness you give to others, but what you get back is healing. In other words, forgiveness is for your own self, not for others. Now that might sound illogical. That might even sound paradoxical. How is it that you forgive the other person but get so much in return? But the truth is it works. It has worked for thousands of years. It still works. And even science is now discovering that in fact it works. So let's talk about science, because that's what we started on the topic of. What happens when somebody hurts you? And that hurt can be, we are talking, now we're not talking about some minor thing, we're talking about some deep hurt. When that hurt happens, whether it is from your spouse or parent or child or some unknown, it can be by accident or on purpose. It can be really somebody did bad to you, or maybe you simply perceived as something really bad. Irrespective of that, what you're going to do, what's going to happen is anger, pain, resentment, and most importantly, replaying that scenario over and over and over and over. All that leads to a number of changes in you as a person, changes in your mind, changes in your body, changes even spiritually, and you as a social person. All that changes when a deep hurt causes constant rumination, constant resentment, deep hurt inside you. So science looks at it from different angles. Well, what physical changes, what mental changes, what social changes, what spiritual changes. But remember, whenever I say that science has looked at it, what I mean is that it has been proven. Science is all about proving, or the modern science anyway. And usually they do so by taking, say, two groups of people. They might have 100 people, and they divide into two groups. One group will be given or taught how to forgive, and other group will not be taught. They would watch them, see what is the difference. What is the difference in outcome? Does one group do better than other? That's called a randomized study. The randomization means you take 100 people, divide them into two groups of equal 50 people, not by choice. You don't decide who goes on which group. That is decided by a flip of a coin. The idea is that you don't let the results be biased. You want unbiased results. And that's how scientific studies are done, especially on human beings. In terms of physical changes that forgiveness can bring about, the autonomic nervous system is the part of neurological system that is not within our control. When I move this hand, that's a part of the nervous system that I control. But then there are many things happen in the body that I don't control. My heart rate, my blood pressure, the activity of my bowels, and so on and so forth. That is under the control of autonomic nervous system. And I won't go into further detail about sympathetic and parasympathetic and so on. But the point is, it lowers heart rate, it lowers your blood pressure, and it has been documented many times over. Heart disease, it reduces the heart disease. I'll give you an example of a Dr. Waltman in Wisconsin who published this study in 2008 where he took two groups of heart patients. So basically they selected, say, about 100 heart patients. All these heart patients had documented heart disease by heart catheterization or heart scan or what have you. Also, all of them had a deep pain. They excluded people who didn't have a deep pain of some sort. Then they put them through several weeks of training in how to forgive. Remember, forgiveness is not one-time event that you go home and, okay, I'm going to forgive somebody. It is a skill that you have to learn. It is like meditation. It can take weeks, months, years. You constantly have to make effort. It can be learned. So they put them through this. Half the group was put through this scale, and then they tested them again. And the group that was put through the forgiveness training had much better scans. They had much fewer angina episodes. They had much fewer ischemic changes or low oxygen changes in their heart. Forgiveness lowers some of the hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones are good when you want to have something, when you're facing something acute, but they're really bad if their levels are elevated throughout your life or long time, because they hurt a number of different body systems. So forgiveness lowers those, and that has been documented. It can relieve chronic pain, backache, headache, abdominal pain. It has been shown to relieve that. It has been documented that HIV people who forgave themselves or forgave others had better outcome. And probably that happened to better immune system, since it has been shown that the markers of immune system are better in people who can practice true forgiveness. condition called fibromyalgia, where people ache all over the body, perhaps through immune system also. Gastrointestinal problems, they're so common. Some of them are related, or at least the incidence of these problems in higher people who cannot forgive, who harbor a deep grudge, who harbor a deep pain or resentment, irritable bowel syndrome, diarrhea, abdominal pain, appetite. These problems have been documented to be much less in people who can forgive. Autoimmune diseases, the episodes of autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and so on are much fewer. People who can forgive sleep better. They have fewer nightmares. And above all, it has also been shown that they live longer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not just living longer. They live longer and live better. What about mental health? People who can forgive have a positive attitude. And I think you all know that positive attitude changes everything in life. People who can forgive have less anger, less anxiety, less depression, less bitterness, less hostility. These people look at life in a much different way. There's a much lower incidence of alcohol abuse, drug abuse. They are much more hopeful. There's a great deal more of self-esteem amongst the people who can forgive. Because just like, as I said earlier, they can forgive themselves for anything wrong they have done. They can forgive others. They can have much greater self-esteem. Let's look at some scientific evidence for that. Incest. I think you all know how bad that can be, how hurtful that can be. So Dr. Friedman in Iowa took incest survivors and published a study in 1995, actually. Half the group was treated with forgiveness training, and other half was treated in a standard way. And they found that the ones who were treated with forgiveness training did much better in their emotional health. In everybody, the pain was less. They were able to cope with life better. They had better self-esteem. They could go through life with much more peace. Why just incest survivors? Look at high-rate adolescent. The anger in children is rising, especially in adolescents. Some of you might know it is a more common problem, increasingly so. The depression in adolescents is increasing. It has increased fourfold in the last 50 years. The suicides in adolescents is increasing. Dr. Gambaro did this study in Wisconsin first, and after the adolescents were put through 12-week study on how to forgive, 12-week teaching on how to forgive, they learned that these kids did much better. Their scores were going bad. They were disruptive in class. The teachers had given up. They didn't know how to handle these kids. And suddenly, after learning this forgiveness, they were doing better. They were doing better everywhere, at home, in society, in academics, every which way. Well, not just in Wisconsin. This study was replicated in Belfast in 2007 and South Korea in 2013 amongst these high anger kids. Take another group, suicide survivor. Person commits suicide. That person is gone. But what does it do to the ones who are left behind? It's horrible for them. And every person who commits suicide leaves at least, that's the number, at least 6 people behind who are affected by that person's suicide. That number could be much bigger. But what does it do to those survivors? The person who committed suicide is gone, but the ones who are left behind, they have guilt. Could they have prevented this? They are angry. Why did he do what he did? They blame somebody else for this suicide. They have a lot of shame. People look down upon them. There is all kinds of problems these people face. And this group has been studied. They've been taught how to forgive the one who is gone, yourself, others. And this group does better. Not just that. Take patient with terminal cancer. It can be very difficult for somebody who is going to die, who knows who's going to die. They might think, why me? Teaching them forgiveness improves the quality of life, and that has been proven. Many other groups, like emotionally abused women, men hurt by abortion. Studies have been conducted in this kind of groups and many others. I have not enumerated all the studies. We don't have time for that. But studies have been performed in the last 30 years on a number of different groups. The bottom line is that the people who can forgive have a much better mental health in all its multiple parameters, in every aspect of mental health. And clearly, when you think about how these people do socially, that's obvious. If you have lower anger, if you have less resentment, then clearly you're not going to act or react out of anger. You're not going to get disappointed so easily. And when you do that, you have much better relationship. Your relationship with your immediate family, your friends, your co-workers, and in the community. You're a happier person, you're a better person, your relationships are genuine, they're stronger. And spiritually, how does forgiveness affect you as a spiritual being? Well, we went through all major religions and saw that forgiveness was at the core of all these faiths. So when you can forgive, your own faith in your religion is reaffirmed. It becomes stronger. And that, friends, allows you to live life of much higher level of integrity, much higher level of satisfaction, much higher level of faith in your own faith. Well, if forgiveness is that good, why not just do it? Let's start. Not that easy, is it? Well, there are barriers, and it's important to recognize barriers. So now these barriers can be learned, they can be gotten rid of. So sometimes we don't practice forgiveness because we are waiting for the other person, the one we think somebody hurt us. We are waiting for that person to apologize. That's a barrier. Don't do that. Or our ego comes in. Well, what did I do? I am the one who is hurt. Why should I be apologizing? Get over that. Or you might fear that if you apologize, you're condoning that act, and this may happen again. As we said earlier, that's not what forgiveness is. Or you might think that if I apologize, my family will think I'm somebody lower than who I am. Ego again. No, that's not. Or narcissism. You might think that I was the one who was hurt. I was the one where something wrong was done to. I. That can be a huge barrier to forgiveness. But you can get over that. Remember, forgiveness is a process. It is not a one-time thing. You cannot wake up one day and say, I forgive. It doesn't happen that easily. Maybe you can rise to that level of spirituality in it, but generally for you and me, it doesn't happen like that. So how do you bring yourself to forgive for something serious, for something that you've been truly offended by, for something that you truly hurt deep inside yourself? First, learn why it matters. Why is it important to forgive? Why is it important for you to be released out of those shackles? Why is it important for you to leave that prison, leave it behind you? How would it change your life? How would it make you a better person? How would it make you a happier person? Learning that matters. And develop a plan. You want to build muscles? You develop a fitness plan. Well, forgiveness fitness plan is a similar thing. Regular workout, regular practicing forgiveness. It can start out as very small elements every day. For example, don't do any tiny thing to make anybody feel bad. Or think of every human being as a unique soul. We talked about the way Jainism looks at it. Every soul is pure. It's only covered by karmic particles. Think about human beings in that sense. Don't think of them as bad people or good people. Or carry out small acts of love and compassion every day. Just tiny act. Don't expect anything in return. Don't bring pride and ego and power into the play. At least make an attempt every day. So what you want to do is, in this fitness plan, every day you want to do something little. It doesn't have to be big. It can start small, but practice on a daily basis. You want to address your inner pain. Inner pain, recognizing, you taking an inventory of all those people who have hurt you. Just recognizing that, and recognizing that the suffering you encountered through that inner pain did not go in vain. Sometimes we suffer through the pain. We think, my God, see how much I've suffered, and you feel bad. But don't let that suffering be unrecognized. Find a meaning in that suffering. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to read this book by a Holocaust survivor, a neurologist from Austria, Dr. Viktor Frankl. He wrote a book, Man's Finding Meaning. I think that's what the title was. What he describes is he went to the concentration camp. He was tortured. His family was killed. He was given everything bad that could be done to him, but he managed to survive. How he did that? He decided one day that yes, he would undergo suffering, but he would not allow himself to be stripped of one thing that he can hold on to, his own decision power. He decided that how he looks at that suffering is his choice. He gave a meaning to it. He was able to get through that concentration camp and have a very meaningful life. If any of you get a chance, read that book. It's a very amazing book. Viktor Frankl, Man's Meaning of Life, I think that's what it's called. Do that. So when you think of suffering, find some meaning. That meaning can be in different forms, that the suffering was not in vain. Practice empathy. Again, I bring you to the Jain view of it. The person who hurt you, that person has a pure soul that is covered by karmic particles. Put yourself in that person's shoes. If you learn about that person who hurt you, you might find that that person is traumatized, that person has problems. Empathize with that, and it will be easier to forgive. In spite of that, forgiveness is not an easy process. When you cannot forgive somebody, don't be hard on yourself. Don't think of yourself as a person unable to forgive, a bad person. Call on your inner strength. Remember, patience. It takes time. It takes determination. It will come to you. Stay with it. And most importantly, forgive yourself. We have talked about why it is important to forgiving yourself, why it is important to separate yourself from the misdeed that you may have committed. Because once you can forgive yourself, the process of forgiving others can begin. Well, let's get back to the two stories that we talked about in the beginning. Sammy. What happened was, one of his trips to prison, a fellow by the name of George came one day to his prison, and he asked Sammy to be brought to his room. Well, Sammy was such an offender, so violent that they handcuffed him, they put shackles and chains around him, and 4 guards escorted him to George's room. George was a tiny fellow. He told the guards, unshackle this fellow, remove the chains. Sammy couldn't believe it. Sammy Rangel could never imagine that a tiny fellow like George would have him unshackled. George basically asked him, what's your story? Tell me your life story. He addressed him as a nephew, not as a prisoner. And when he left, after listening to Sammy's story, Sammy did not give away the story easily. It took a little while, but he did. When George left, George told him, I would like to see you out of this prison. Well, the hardened criminal that Sammy was, a few months later, he beat up some other prisoners and he was put in an isolated cell. From there, he had a chance to write a letter to George, and he apologized and said, I'm sorry, I failed you. George wrote back, did not blame Sammy. He expressed some concern, but he told Sammy he can be a good man. He has a pure soul. That concern changed something in Sammy. So when Sammy was put in an intense drug rehabilitation program, he was told about the importance of forgiveness. Something clicked in it, and he decided he's going to become a better person, that he would forgive. And he learned to forgive all the people he had deep down hate about. Great deal of hate for his own mother. Great deal of hate for everybody around him. He was able to forgive. He was able to forgive above all himself for all the atrocities that he had committed. He did masters in social work. He started helping government to reduce violence on the street. He wrote a book, Life After Hate. The man was reformed even after such bad things he went through, and the life he kind of changed to. What about Nancy? Nancy was full of hate. She had lost all her family. Remember, the only son she had committed suicide, and she blamed son's mother-in-law who took him out for drinking. She blamed herself. Why didn't she stop him? She blamed her own son who committed suicide. Why was he drinking? Why was he bad? That's horrible that he left me alone in this world all by myself. Luckily, Nancy was put through forgiveness therapy. Yes, psychologists use forgiveness as a therapy now. She was put through therapy. She learned the importance of forgiveness. She was able to forgive herself, her son, the mother-in-law, and had a lot more positive life with less of anxiety, less of depression, better self-esteem, and became a more productive citizen, a happier citizen. Let's try to end this conversation with a few quotes. Gandhi, the weak can never forgive. It is the attribute of the strong. Kshama virasya bhushanam. Martin Luther King said, forgiveness is not an occasional act. You just don't do it occasionally. It is a constant attitude. Every day of your life, every minute. Forgiveness is an attitude, not something you plan for one time in your life or 2 times in your life. Mandela, he said, as I walked out of that prison door, remember he was in prison for some 17 years. He was tortured. But when he left that prison, he said, I knew I had to leave the bitterness and hatred behind me in that very prison, or else I would still be in the prison. He would still be in the prison of hatred and bitterness. He left all that behind. He was able to ask the whole nation to forgive. And some of them you might know that when South Africa was freed, there was a project started by the government where the transgressors were brought with the transgressee, that is the wrongdoers, people who committed crimes, who committed rape, who burned people with the necklace, destroyed families. They were put right across in the same room with the people who were hurt. That process of bringing about the bad things on the surface, forgiving, was a tremendous success. Many people found a new meaning in life. You might even know a program on CNN by Van Jones called Redemption Project. He tries to do the same thing. If you get a chance, watch it. It's called Redemption Project. He brings prisoners and the victims in front of each other. Friends, forgiveness is a powerful tool. It will turn your life into a much better one. It will improve your relationships. We can make life much more fulfilling and above all, a lot more fun. Something we all hope for, we all dream of, but just didn't know how to create it. Jain, thank you once again for this opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kirti Jain. This was a very, very enlightening lecture with such simplicity and with such simple slides that you put in, with such a vast subject, concised in such small time, but so many things I'm taking back. And one thing I would love to tell you that the internal turmoil within the person from the part of getting hurt and from the part of forgiveness, it could be long, it could be small, but the catharsis of the body is very important. Females, they cry. I mean, they have tears that ease the catharsis of the process. Males don't cry. This is what is being taught from day one a male is born in the society, that men don't cry, but the catharsis of body with the act of forgiveness makes everybody's life easier around you. And we all have to learn. Maybe what you said, that forget but not forgive. Forgetting or forgive but not forget. So which part is the best one? Is like, I feel, forgive the person but never forget, because that part is going to teach the lesson in life that you don't do the same thing to the other person. So thank you so much, Dr. Kirti Jain. And I have some such positive comments in the chat if you have time. And if you can look towards the chat, so many have put in forth great things. So we are open for, yes, Uncle.
My pointer is not working, so I can't click on chat. So if there's
okay. I'll send you the
any questions? Are there any questions?
Yeah, we are ready for the questions. So please unmute your microphone and ask Dr. Kirti Jain questions. Go ahead. Narendra Arora has raised his hand. So sir, go ahead and ask your question. You can unmute your microphone.
Kirti, congratulations for such a enlightening and empowering talk. Thank you very much. My question is choice. That forgiveness, as you rightly said, is an attitude. So who in our lives play the most critical or crucial role to teach us this virtue of forgiveness? Number one. Number two is, are there any situations in life when we say I would not forgive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Narendra. I might add, Narendra is a friend of mine for 50 years. We were in the same batch at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and he's a pediatric gastroenterologist who is still researching and coordinating research all over the world. He's a tremendously successful person. So Narendra, if I understood it correctly, did you ask me who would be the best one to teach us how to forgive, or who can we learn from the attitude of forgiveness?
Yes, that was my first question. That, as you rightly said, forgiveness is an attitude.
Yes.
And so it has to become part of our life.
Yes.
So, what is the best way of learning this attitude? That was number one.
Yes, Narendra, as I went through this, how to learn to forgive, it's a skill. You acquire the skill. Of course, like most of the things, probably mother is best suited to teach you as a child, because mother is more forgiving than anybody else will know. But with that said, we all have to learn the skill. We have to practice the skill. We have to take it in small steps at a time and develop that attitude. So it is not something we can do it overnight. It's a process, and we should accept it as a process. And I drew an analogy with the meditation, if you remember. Those of us who have tried meditation, it is extremely frustrating in the beginning because you can't control your thoughts. You take it in small steps. You persist with it. You continue the practice long term. And forgiveness in many ways is very similar.
My second question was, what are those conditions, or is there any situation when you should not forgive?
So no, the answer is no. There is no such condition that you should not forgive, because remember, forgiveness is not condoning the act that was bad. Forgiveness is not forgetting the act that was committed. It is simply dissociating yourself. Forgiveness is a act of kindness towards your own self, getting out of that process of being in the prison, the process of resentment, the process of rumination, which is hurting you. So forgiveness is for your own self, and therefore there is no such thing as any crime that cannot be forgiven. You forgive everything, although doesn't mean you don't fight against it. You can continue a fight like Martin Luther did, like Mandela did, or Gandhi did, or many others did. So forgiveness does not mean, and we had gone through, I don't know if you were there earlier, we had talked about things that forgiveness is not. And therefore, the answer is there is no crime ever that you cannot forgive for.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, Kirti. Yash here. Hi.
Yes, hi.
Yes, very nice talk, and I gave a very good compliment to you because it's a unique way you put forward is addressing negativity through forgiveness, because the bitterness. So my mantra is better, not bitter. So if you forgive, then you are reducing or almost getting rid of your negativity and reactivity. And this is what is been taught in Gita as well, that we have to perform non-reactive karmas. The ones, anything which generates a negative reaction should be discarded.
Thank you, Yash. Yash is a highly spiritual person, lives in London, is a plastic surgeon. Thank you, Yash.
Thank you, Kirti. It was very, very nice talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David Skip has a question. David, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Excellent presentation, and echoing everybody who said it was presented in such clear terms. I think we all are going to be able to apply a lot of what we learned. A quick question. Dr. Jain, do we harbor subconscious anger and resentment that we probably aren't aware of, and it's affecting our life, our health? If that does occur, how can we discover that?
So first of all, regular introspection and meditation can help discover. Secondly, I think and I think it is for that reason that these days were created. The day of forgiveness that Jains practice once a year it was intended to do that introspection. But there are times that we do not realize that. And in such situations, the people who are trained to uncover these things, sometimes some professional help from a psychologist is needed. And psychologists and such have now adopted forgiveness therapy as a part of bringing people out of those issues, as a part of discovering these deep-seated anger and resentment that we might have that we may not be acknowledging. So it can be done. Oftentimes, if we meditate on it often enough, if we recognize that we have an issue and go deep into ourselves through meditation, we can discover it. But there are times you will need professional help.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from anybody? You can unmute your microphone and ask, and then we can go to our next step.
Dr. Jain,
Yes.
thanks again. This is Sapan. Again, excellent talk at so many levels. It was refreshing. It was a term we have heard since, born in a Jain family, and you start understanding words. This is said every year, as you said, but how to bring it with emotion and feelings. Thanks for reminding us of that. The one question I have, and maybe it's not a question, I think this is the direction you are taking us, it seems here, with what's happening at FIU with Jain Center and the Jain Studies program. Perhaps, a small course on forgiveness, on forgetting, on redemption. I think almost seems is in order, and it seems you have already written the first chapter of it. So congratulations again for a great presentation. And I would encourage all Jain leaders to come together for this course at FIU.
Thank you, Sapan. Sapan, our president of Jain Education and Research Foundation, is always very generous with his praise. So thank you again. But I think it's a good idea. Samniji will be terrific in teaching a course like that, and I would highly recommend that.
This is your wife sitting downstairs watching your video. Asha.
Uh-oh. Now comes out the truth.
No.
She's forgiven you. Asha has forgiven you, Kirti.
No. My not a question, but comment. Just like Dr. Narendra Arora had asked you very specifically, what steps that one can follow in learning how to forgive yourself and forgive others. So do you have any material to share or book that everybody can take advantage of it? That would be very helpful if people would get access to it.
Yes, there is plenty written about how to do it in small steps. I went through some of that in this talk as well, where we talked about how, there were 6 steps I presented. First, recognize why it matters to forgive, and how to practice small things in your daily life, and how to address your inner pain, and how to understand that forgiveness and the suffering you went through by the atrocity that was committed to you, that was not in vain, that there was meaning to it. And these kind of steps help you take you towards forgiveness and persistence with the process. Realize that it's not a one-time thing, it's a process.
Can I say something? This is called attribution error. So a lot of time we react to certain things by attributing our feelings to something which has gone wrong. And I think we should all kind of work towards zero attribution error rate. Once we have achieved a zero attribution error, we are we are saying that nothing is because of something that has happened, So and then that state is a very nice state. And perhaps Mahatma Gandhi ji was in that state when he was shot, and he says, "Oh, please forgive the people who shot me," So, it was his lifelong forgiveness which he practiced. So yeah, it's lovely. I would love to join the forum. Love to join it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
There is one question. There is one question in the chat. Dr. Kirti,
Yeah.
if you can answer that. It says, is it not necessary you forget what you have forgiven?
So the answer is no. You don't have to forget what you've forgiven. It's awesome if you can, but we are human beings. We have a brain that cannot just forget when we tell it to forget. It's not a computer that you can simply erase. You will remember. And it's not even necessary to forget, because once you forget, the atrocity can be committed again. Once you forget, you lose, or you forget your right to fight against the atrocities. So for the forgiveness is detaching it from that event. You're forgiving yourself more than you're forgiving the others. By forgiving others, you are getting out of this prison that is hurting you every single moment, every single day. Therefore, it is not necessary to forget to forgive. I would probably take a step beyond and say perhaps not even desirable, but at the same time, it is also true that if by some process you can forget, that's more power to you, but it's not possible for us humans.
Kirti, I have a question. This is Sanjeev Kumar.
Professor Sanjeev, yes.
Kirti, I have been benefited my contact with friends who had belief in Jainism, and I listened to some of the discourses, and again, thanks to them. I have been trying to practice forgiveness, but the problem I face is it takes me long time to come to that stage, reflecting on it, convincing myself, and during that period which I take to forgive others, my behavior is negative, and it is strongly influenced because of what suffering I have received from somebody whom I am not able to forget. Over a longer period of time, I am able to forgive, but it takes me a little time. And what can I do to overcome that period of suffering and not forgiving?
So Professor Sanjeev is a highly accomplished person who has been with the Indian Army and WHO as a physician and has been through some 40 different countries taking care of the kids. Sanjeev, thank you for being here. So the important thing there, Sanjeev, is to realize that your suffering was not in vain. You have to find a purpose. Think of it, that suffering as that made you a better person. That going through that suffering was not totally useless, not in vain. That suffering is at least in part the reason that you're thinking about forgiveness today. That did make you a better person, that did serve a purpose. Finding that purpose in that suffering will change the way you look at it.
Even Krishna says in the Gita, in the last 18.66, he says, Sarva dharman paritajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayami machacha. He uses the word mokshayami, that if you come under my guidance and protection, I will forgive you of everything you've done. So forgiveness is very, very important thing. And as you say, you have to practice it. You have to inculcate in your internal self, and then things become easier. Thank you.
So,
thanks, Kirti. Thanks, Yash.
So, Sanjeev, I want to add one more thing, that they say when forgiveness is hard, call on your inner strengths or your other strengths. And those other strengths are patience. Don't be hard on yourself. Don't think that since you can't forgive, you're a bad person. Be patient, be persistent, recognize that it is necessary, give meaning to your suffering, and those things definitely help with forgiveness.
Thank you
Thanks,
all
Kirti.
for joining, and thank you so much for answering all those questions. I know I apologize. We have taken a little bit extra time today, but thank you so much, Dr. Kirti Jain, and all the viewers and audience that have joined us. Now, Samiji will talk to us about her next step.
So I'm very much thankful to Dr. Kirti Jain, the former chairman of Jain Education Research Foundation, for his excellent talk. He has shown what is the benefit of forgiveness and how it harms when we don't forgive. So he has shown all the scientific data and proofs and studies that how we get affected by our own negative feeling when we don't forgive. So this is a really very great practice in Jainism from centuries, and it is mandatory for, especially for the monks and nuns, that they have to make repentance for any misdeed, misthought, though something may be done very wrong with monks and nuns too, but they have to forgive each and every living being. Whether they have done by their wrong habits or any other malices, but monks and nuns should not keep anything malicious towards any living beings. So that is the great practice for the monks and nuns, and they have to repent, or they have to introspect every day, twice in a day, before sunrise and before after sunset. They have to forgive each and every living beings of the universe, wherever they are. If they are in heaven or in hell, even you have to forgive them. So this is a very great teaching, though Dr. Kirti Jain has rightly said that it is a process. It takes time. You have to be patient. You have to be persistent in practicing all these great virtues. So it is really a true thing. And for just some of the steps, Dr. Kirti Jain has already said that how you can follow this practice, how you can do this in your life by following some simple steps. And there are 2 simple steps also I would like to suggest, that whenever something is done wrong with us by anyone, by any reasons, can we let it go? So it should not adversely affect our mindset, our behavior, our wordings, our actions. So if this is the simple, what we say, simple tip, that let it go. Just you have to think that everything, whatever is being done, might have some meaning. And Dr. Kirti Jain has rightly said that we should find out some meaning, some purpose behind all whatever is being happened with us. So that is also true. When we go into a very deep study of the karma philosophy, then we find that if something is being done wrong with us, might be we have done something wrong with that person, not in this life, but in past many other lives. Who can say that I have not done something wrong with that person who is doing something wrong with us in present life? So that should also be in our mind before that might be I am just paying for my past wrong deeds. And if somebody is doing something wrong with us due to his malices or negativities or any other reasons, he has to pay for that also. This is also a very great principle of karma philosophy, that everybody has to pay for his misdeeds, right and wrong deeds. So if you don't punish, or law doesn't punish, it is the karma philosophy, it is the law of nature which is governing and which is regulating the whole cosmic process and all the phenomena of the universe. So that law is working behind all, and that makes justice with every person. So we have to think of these karmic principles too. They are very important principles behind the practice of forgiveness. And tit for tat is not the right principle according to Jainism, because if somebody is doing something wrong with you, and if you are doing something wrong with that, so you are doing the same thing what he has done with you. Is it not true? From social point of view, or from individual point of view, or some personal point of view, we can say that we are not doing something wrong, but he has done, and that's why we have given answer to him or her. So that can be the way, one logic to justify our action. But according to spiritual or philosophical or karmic principles, it is not the right way. You should not repeat at least that thing which is not right or good for you. So you should not at least behave in that way with others. So that these are the simple things which we have to keep in our mind. And if we do something in revenge, we have also again to pay for that. So there is cycle, there is chain, endless chain behind such kind of a negative behavior or action or reaction. So if we want to break that chain, we have to learn forgiveness. At least we should be in peace. Our mind should be always in positive waves, rather than having something negativities in it, and that pops up many times whenever such person comes before us. So how we can get rid of those negativities, unnecessary negativities, and can elevate our inner self to the higher purpose. So that must be the main thinking to practice all these virtuous things. So again, I would like to thank. And there is one Acharya Mahaprajna ji has suggested one contemplation, one meditation, especially to develop this habit of forgiveness, and that is the contemplation on forgiveness. So you can meditate just that I would forget that person. I have no enmity with enmity with that person. I don't keep anything in my mind towards him which is negative. So in this way, you have to contemplate for 5 to 10 minutes every day. Automatically, you will find that you are getting rid of all these negativities. And there is one more contemplation which has been suggested under Praksha meditation, and that is that you have to learn that how you can be more positive and positive towards yourself and to others. So all these practices can also make changes in our ideas, in our actions, and in our behavior. And we can learn these great virtues just by contemplating for 5 to 10 minutes, and we can develop it in us. So though it is very difficult, we can talk, but to practice is difficult. But if we are committed to practice all these things and want to be in peace and in good thoughts, we have to learn all these things. So it is very good. Again, I would like to thank to Dr. Kirti Jain for accepting my request for giving talk under the series. And he at once accepted, though he had to wait for 4 months for giving the talk. He committed 4 months before. So I'm sorry, and I also appreciate your patience. So thanks again for wonderful talk. The next talk will be announced shortly, and you will all get the information on time. So thank you for coming and listening. I'm giving thanks to all the audience, speaker, organizers, host, Jain Center of South Florida, and also Professor David Ski for coming and introducing our renowned speaker. So thanks to all of you.